I was scrolling on Facebook Marketplace the other day and I came across a great deal for some free wood, so you know I couldn't pass it up. The ad was actually for some free plywood, but unfortunately that was all gone, but I was still able to pick up these old shelf pieces. I like to always share some scripture in my videos, and I hope that you all enjoy this verse from the book of Romans. I started off by using a circular saw to cut apart the scrap wood and just get it into some usable pieces. And I was kind of going in autopilot as I did this, but I realized at the very end I should not be wearing gloves when using a circular saw, so just a tip for you all, make sure you're not using it because it's easy to get it caught up in the blade by mistake. After taking some measurements, I decided to make a shop table with these pieces of wood. I've been meaning to make one for a little while, and this is going to be a nice place to store some of my extra tools. So I went ahead to the backyard and grabbed some of these other scrap pieces of wood that I already had from before, and these are just extra long pallet pieces that I already had cut up. So I went ahead and started to remove the nails and get these ready to be used. And a lot of people seem to dislike pallet and scrap wood projects, but I really think, especially as a beginner, these are such a great opportunity because there's no risk of ruining the material in terms of cost because the materials were free. So I think it's a great way to experiment, and then when you just need to build something for around the shop that doesn't have to look fancy but just needs to be functional, I find often that these are great pieces of wood to use. They come in various sizes, and of course you didn't have to spend money on it. So I think it's a perfect solution. So I took some quick measurements, and this is the general idea of the frame that I'm going to be building. Next, I grabbed my pieces and went to the miter saw to start cutting them to the exact length I needed. And one thing to note with these scrap pieces, sometimes you will find screws and nails in them, so just be sure to take an extra look, and thankfully I was able to save my saw blade here because I'd caught this one before I cut it. After cutting my longer pieces to size, I went ahead and put together a simple little stop block jig, and all this is I've set up some large pieces to extend the fence of my miter saw, and then I just set a little piece in to be a stop block. And this is a great way to make easy repeatable cuts, and it doesn't require any type of complex jig. And I do actually have a separate video that I'll link that walks through how to set up one of these stop block stations. But this is a really easy way to get some repeatable cuts, and that's what I use to cut off my smaller pieces and take out some of the repetition. Now that I had everything cut to size, it's time to start assembling. So I started off by putting together these little ladder-like shapes, and I built 3 of these, and those are going to serve as essentially the frame for each of the shelves. And I honestly got kind of lazy here. I didn't pre-drill the first few times before I screwed, and it worked out, but then I ended up splitting a piece. So I had to do some repair work with some glue, and I learned my lesson and pre-drilled the rest of the holes before I assembled this. After finishing up my first one of these supports, I went ahead and copied this over to the next couple. And I didn't do a lot of exact measuring in this. It was really just a matter of matching the first one because the exact measurements weren't too important to me. But it ended up lining up well once I used the first one as a template. And something that I've found to be pretty helpful is using a clamp to get these pieces nice and tight together before you screw them. And that's worked out really well for me. And this also helps to ensure that it will stay square when you secure it together. So here I'm just using my square, make sure everything is lined up nicely, and then just finishing securing each of these rungs on there. So at this point, I've finished up all of my different supports for the shelves, but it's time to cut off some longer pieces that are going to serve as essentially the top frame of this. So I went outside, grabbed another piece of this scrap, and started cutting away. And these pieces aren't necessarily designed to be particularly structural, but more so just to help provide a little bit of support to the frame and make sure it's not wobbly once I have the shelves on there. So I went ahead and secured each of my little mini ladder shelf supports to these top rungs. Unfortunately, these scrap pieces have a big groove in the middle, and then they also had some shelf holes drilled in them. So it was really hard to get a good point to screw these together. So I actually ended up just grabbing my brad nailer, which honestly is probably not the best practice, but it's worked out completely fine. And I just shot a bunch of nails into this just to get it together. And it worked out just fine. These pieces aren't structural, so it hasn't been an issue with holding the weight because the other smaller frames are really the thing holding this up. So if you run into a similar issue, it's okay to grab a nailer, especially for something in the shop. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I think that's one of the things that I appreciate about these scrapwood projects is it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be just functional and work for your shop. And that's what it's all about. And the last step for me before I put the shelves on here was to screw this into my studs just to make sure this shelf isn't going anywhere. And once I did, this was nice and sturdy, so it was time to get those shelves on and put those in place. I forgot to record me actually putting the shelves on there, but essentially all I did is use those pallet pieces and then screwed them into the different support points to make sure that they weren't going to shift around. And I only had 3 pieces for the bottom 2 shelves, so I did one full one and then I cut the other one in half, and it's worked out just fine. So here I have my nice little storage table. I still have to trim a little piece off the end of the smaller pieces, but this is a great little spot in my workshop to fit some extra tools. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.